The world is full of coincidences. Most of them are harmless, and sometimes they can even be lucky. But every once in a while, there's a coincidence that feels beyond unlikely. One that makes your jaw drop and you think to yourself, there's no way this could possibly be true. And today we're going to look at one of those coincidences. The coincidence around Hanseatic League that feels impossible. Before we get into it, remember to give us a thumbs up and a quick click on our subscribe button. If you do, we'll give you a cookie. A slightly stale but still edible cookie. We're not made of money, you know. But for now, let's go back in time to Northern Europe during the 13th century. At this point in history, much of the landmass we refer to as Scandinavia had been converted to Christianity. Still, old traditions lived on in many communities and pagan beliefs were still held dear by some. In 1248, Danish King Valdemar II set about converting the remaining pagans in his kingdom to Christianity. He was especially frustrated with the holdouts along the coast of what is now Estonia, Latvia, and northern Germany. This region was largely protected from Danish raids by an impassable swamp called the Big Muddy. It wasn't completely impenetrable, but most armies were deterred by the prospect of having to cross it. But in 1249, Valdemar got lucky. A local chieftain betrayed his allies and led Danish forces right through the swamp and to their doorstep. The local population wasn't ready for battle, so they fled, many of them fleeing across the Baltic Sea to Sweden. When this happened, German and Swedish rulers saw an opportunity to expand their power over the region. They quickly made plans to invade and fight against Danish control, but they weren't prepared to go to war yet. They needed supplies, men, and money. In particular, they needed ships to mount an effective attack on Denmark. This wasn't really a problem for Sweden and Denmark, as both countries had access to shipyards and plenty of men who knew how to work in them. But the Holy Roman Empire was a bit behind when it came to shipbuilding. There were plenty of craftsmen in its northern provinces who could build ships, but there were few places where raw materials could be gathered and assembled in large enough quantities to create warships. As it turned out, though, the solution was closer than anyone thought. In 1260, the northernmost port city of Lübeck, Germany, became a free imperial city, granting its citizens special privileges and exemptions from taxes. These freedoms allowed Lübeck to grow in wealth and influence, which it used to become a center for trade and commerce. At the same time, the Hanseatic League was just beginning to form. This would eventually become a powerful alliance of northern European merchants and trading towns. But it was a long way from that at the time. In fact, its origins are a little murky and scholars debate its exact founding date. What we do know is that Lübeck joined the League sometime in the early 13th century and played a major role in its development. This wasn't just because of its strategic location or exemption from taxes. It also had to do with its ruler at the time, a man named Johan der Erla. He was a member of the von Puddlingen family, which had ruled Lübeck since 1227. Johan took his responsibilities as the leader of Lübeck seriously. He attended the diets of the Holy Roman Empire whenever he could and worked hard to advance the interests of his people. In particular, he wanted to help Lübeck join the prestigious group of cities known as the 12 Cities of the Holy Roman Empire. To qualify, Lübeck had to meet certain criteria. For starters, it needed to be a big city. At the time, it had a population of around 6,000, putting it on par with other potential candidates like Cologne and Utrecht. It also had to have a strong economy and produce valuable goods. Again, Lübeck was doing quite well, and its exports of fish, timber, grain, and cloth were highly sought after throughout the empire. Finally, it needed to show that it was loyal to the emperor and willing to send troops to fight in his name. This was something of a sticking point for Lübeck, as it had a long history of independence and its citizens were wary of any perceived threats to their freedom. Still, Johann was determined to get his city into the exclusive club, so he started making preparations. In 1266, he began constructing a castle to impress the emperor. 2 years later, He sent representatives to meet with rival German princes and secure their support. And in 1272, he went all in and built a fleet of warships. This last-minute preparation paid off big time. Later that year, Emperor Rudolf of Habsburg visited Lübeck and was blown away by what he saw. He was impressed by the city's size and prosperity, and he was especially pleased with John's efforts to make Lübeck a loyal and powerful ally. So he did the unthinkable. He agreed to admit Lübeck to the 12 cities, making it the 13th city in the exclusive group. This was a huge honor for Lübeck, and its citizens celebrated with a massive festival. People came from all over northern Germany to take part in the festivities, and the city's reputation as a cultural and intellectual center was born. The following decades saw Lübeck flourish like never before. Its position in the Hanseatic League gave it access to vast new markets, and its proximity to the prosperous towns of Scandinavia made it a hub for international trade. Its wealth and power grew steadily until, in 1364, it was devastated by a fire. Over half of its buildings were destroyed, and the city was left in ruins. To make matters worse, a plague arrived shortly after and wiped out a third of the remaining population. Lübeck never recovered from these disasters, and its decline marked the end of the Middle Ages in northern Germany. But despite its fall from grace, Lübeck remained an important city throughout history. It continued to play a major role in trade and culture, and its legacy as the birthplace of the Hanseatic League lives on to this day. As for King Valdemar, his efforts to convert Denmark to Christianity were ultimately unsuccessful. Many pagan traditions remained in place, and the old ways persisted in some communities for centuries. Still, he left a lasting legacy as one of Denmark's most influential kings, and his memory is still revered in Danish folklore. So what does this all have to do with the impossible coincidence? Well, it turns out that the entire story of Lübeck's rise to power was based on a monumental lie. We now know that Johann der Earl was not a member of the von Puddlingen family, and that he never ruled Lübeck in the 13th century. In fact, there's very little evidence that he existed at all. In 1978, a historian discovered a medieval manuscript detailing the supposed lineage of the von Puddlingen family. The document traced their ancestry back to the 9th century and listed a series of names and dates. Historians accepted this document as fact for centuries until 1978, when a historian noticed that the handwriting was actually from the 17th century. Someone had forged the document in order to legitimize the von Puddlingen family's claim to the throne. But that raises another question. Why would someone go to all the trouble of forging this document if it wasn't true? Or was it all just a big mistake? Well, the answer is that the von Puddlingen family was the only family with an interest in Lübeck's history. Another powerful dynasty, the Schallenberg-Lippe, had ruled over the city for several generations, and they were eager to put their own stamp on Lübeck's past. So they hired a forger to create a document that traced their lineage back to the 9th century and listed Lübeck as their ancestral homeland. They then circulated this document widely, and it eventually found its way into the hands of historians. For centuries, they accepted the document as true and wrote about the supposed von Puttgarden dynasty with little suspicion. It wasn't until 1978 that the forgery was uncovered and the truth finally came to light. Lübeck's history was rewritten, and the Schallenberg-Lippe family was given credit for ruling the city in the Middle Ages. It might seem like a minor detail to us today, but at the time, it was a major scandal. The discovery shook the academic world and raised questions about the reliability of historical sources. After all, how could such a convincing forgery have fooled experts for so long? It also cast doubt on everything that had been written about the Middle Ages and forced historians to go back and double-check their sources. The implications were far-reaching, and the impact of the discovery is still felt today. As for Johann der Earl, he may not have been a real person after all, but his story continues to capture the imagination. Some historians believe that he may have been based on a real-life ruler, but that his deeds were exaggerated or entirely fabricated. Others believe that he never existed at all, but that hasn't stopped people from telling his story for centuries. And in a way, that is fitting for a man who may have been nothing more than a figment of Lübeck's collective imagination. Now it's time to make your voice heard. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think. Which fact surprised you the most? The fact that the entire story of Lübeck's first ruler was a lie, or that the document used to prove it was no lie was also a lie? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give us a thumbs up and a quick click on our subscribe button. And if you want to see more videos like this, you can do that too. Just click the links on screen now.